when the body stops, the brain can shortly follow. There's so many benefits to exercise that seem to be overlooked, and we tend to associate exercise with a vanity metric. And there's just so much more to our long-term health that's comes from movement and from intense movement. And that's not to underplay diet or sleep.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching our videos. If you'd like to support us some more, you can explore our homemade natural skincare products at purelytallow.com. Thank you so much for supporting my small business. Hey everybody, welcome to the Carnivore Revolution. I'm Serena, and my special guest today is Zane Griggs. He is a fitness, longevity, and high performance coach. He's an author and a podcast host. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Serena. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this conversation because I just turned 51.
Mm.
And people struggle with exercise. We struggle with fitness. We struggle with the right foods to eat as we age. And so I want to get your story first, and then we'll kind of dive into some questions.
Oh, okay. My story, huh?
Yeah, well, that's what I call it. Like, why
Yeah,
are you here? Why did I ask you to come on?
right.
Just how you got to be this fitness expert. Like, where did you get started with all of this and clean eating and all that kind of stuff?
Well, it was very, very experimental. Early 20s. I'd already been into fitness starting in college, like working out and stuff, but diet wasn't great. And then I developed this interest in longevity in my 20s, which was the mid early 90s. So we didn't have social media to plug in and start searching and pulling up, studies on everything. So you had to read and experiment. And I just knew I wanted to avoid metabolic disease as I got older. And that's I'd seen my uncles struggle with it. My dad didn't because he'd always worked out and, lift weights, ran, pretty much watched his diet. And so I thought there's got to be something to this. And I just started digging in, asking people questions who seemed to be very into it, reading. I did all sorts of things. I was a vegetarian for 3.5 years. I did juice fast, week long juice
Same.
fast. I
Yes, me
did
too.
all kinds of stuff in that time. I actually ended up getting a virus. I lost a lot of my college muscle, of course, being a vegetarian for that long. Beans and rice, almonds, making my own almond milk because it wasn't in the stores back then, right? Then I got this virus that kind of made all these sores in my mouth, and I didn't want to eat for like 3 days. And my doctor told me, I think you could have shook the virus. It shouldn't have taken hold like it did, but your vegetarian diet probably depressed your immune system. And so that was like, I had worked really hard at trying to do this well, but I listened. I added like some whey protein, some eggs, fish in, and it was immediate. Like I immediately, brain turned on, mental energy. I actually forgot to drink coffee for a few days within the first week or two. And I started putting some muscle and some strength back on. And then I eventually, about probably 4 or 5 years later, in '98, started working as a personal trainer. And of course, most of my people wanted to lose weight. So I found that low carb diet was a great tool for those people who wanted to lose weight. About 2002, I started using a low carb diet with my clients. 2010, started experimenting with intermittent fasting and fasted workouts. And then moving forward, applying that to my clients. And I've just kind of tinkered through most of my time to really just to hone in and find out what worked well and what didn't. And some things, worked okay when I was younger, but as I got older, I had to, pull back a little bit from the metabolic stress. Some of the dietary stress just didn't work well for me. They caused me to overtrain along with my working out. And so I made adjustments along the way, learning. So I knew how to, it really helped me work with individuals, right? So understanding that I don't need to take a one size fit all approach. I don't need to make, uh, like marry myself to ideology or to just specific tools, but make sure the tools fit the need, the goals, and the individual with my clients. And so that testing beyond kind of feeding my curiosity were great learning experiences through trial and error that I value. I consider those gifts that I can pass on to my clients. But that's how I got here. I'm 53, and I recently, as you mentioned, wrote a book with Dr. Ken Berry called Kicking Ass After 50, which is geared just to get, really pointed at your middle-aged guy who's trying to kind of get his health back, right? And not be taken out of his career or the things he just wants to keep accomplishing because of a preventable lifestyle disease, right? And he could take hold of his life and really leverage those years of experience as he gets as he gets older, with along with his improved health, right? Maximal health. So that's really that's my story. That's as quick as I can get
Yeah, no,
it.
that was great. And I find it interesting the thing about the doctor telling you that it's probably
Yeah,
your vegetarian diet. And so many people, I think, make that choice to be vegan or vegetarian, and they don't see themselves getting, malnourished
right.
or being unhealthier. But so many people describe it like you did, like they added the meat back in and like the lights came back on.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just, it creates
exactly
such
right.
a
Because
brain
you
fog.
think, oh, I'm not doing it right, or I can improve this, or something wrong with my approach, or it'll my body will figure it out. And there's room for that. There's room to give your body adjustment to changes, but it's often a matter of a few weeks to at most a couple months. It's not years,
Mhm.
right? It's not several months to years for your body to figure out. If you're having negative feedback on something 3, 6 months, 9 months, a year later, there's a lot more going on than you not doing it right. Probably, I mean, check yourself, check your tools, check your modalities, and if things are pretty right on, you should be getting benefits. You should be having positive changes,
Mhm.
right? If you have some pretty obvious negative changes, like losing muscle, like I was, or my immune system, or I was hungry all the time,
Mhm.
tired often, low energy, it that may be one of the tools you're using, not you.
Right.
So
And I think so often people figure, oh, I need to vegan or vegetarian harder. I need to take more
right,
supplements. But if you need
that's
that
what I
many
mean.
supplements with your diet, you're not on the right diet.
Right. If you can't live without them, I mean, B12, heme iron, vitamin A, these are things severely lacking in a vegetarian diet,
Mhm.
right? You can't, those are primarily in like retinol, the retinol version of A, which we have to convert the beta carotene, the plant version of A to the retinol version in our bodies. And that's really very inefficient. You might
Mhm.
get 30% of, if you're lucky, of that beta converting to retinol. But for the most part, those are animal-based foods. Choline, I
Mhm.
mean, it's just beyond the amino acids, beyond the protein quality. There's micronutrients that we really can only get in a decent amount through, or sometimes like B12 and heme iron, only from animal foods, you know? And I mean, our bodies are not set up to live without them long term, right?
Yeah.
We're great survivors and our bodies are very resilient and they will hold on for a time, but there's a cost to that many times because we're breaking down our own tissue to create those nutrients in some cases, especially with protein. But B12, heme iron, I mean, you really can't live without those. And those are based in animal foods.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we get older, what do you think is the most important aspect for somebody in their 40s and let's say 50s? Like, as we're crossing that line, I hate to say it like that because we're both in our 50s. So, I don't really want to say it like that because 50 doesn't seem old anymore, right? Isn't that so weird that the older you get, the younger your age seems? Right. Because I remember looking at people that were 50 and thinking, wow, they're a lot older than me, when I was 35 or 40. So, anyway,
Right.
what do you think is the most important aspect as we get older? What's the most important thing we should be doing for longevity?
Hmm. Ooh, that's a tough question. I definitely think if you haven't already, you have to start strength training because we are sarcopenia and bone loss are just accelerating as you get past 40. And that's something you can truly do something about and move the needle the other direction. If not, just stop it, right? And you can stop it in its tracks, or you can add, depending on where you are in your fitness or your level of muscle mass and bone mass, you can move the needle in the positive direction. And we absolutely need that when we see that the number one cause of fatal and non-fatal injuries for people over 65 is actually falling, right? And they're falling in their kitchen. They're falling on their own floor, right? They're not rock climbing.
Right.
So they're falling on the floor and that's debilitating them to the point, even if the fall doesn't get them, if they're debilitated for a couple months, that time in bed without being mobile puts them at greater risk for other diseases. So I mean, it's a cascade of
Yeah.
when we stop moving, when the body stops, the brain can shortly follow. And so I think strength training for muscle mass, bone mass, and I'm not trying to say bodybuilding, but maintain strength, maintain bone. That's going to help your metabolic health as well because you have insulin sensitive active muscle, which is a great glucose sink. Hormonally, the hormonal stimulation from intense activity or exercise, the myokines that are released during exercise, which are these little chemicals that impact tissues all over your body for their metabolic health, as well as cognitive function, because of the, like, BDNF is one of them that goes to the brain and helps the neuronal health of the hippocampus. So there's so many benefits to exercise that seem to be overlooked, and we tend to associate exercise with a vanity metric. And there's just so much more to our long-term health that's comes from movement and from intense movement. And that's not to underplay diet or sleep. I think those are the three foundations for our health, that we, an adequate protein intake, is mandatory because of the so really our ability to convert, as we age, our ability to convert protein into muscle starts to diminish. It's called anabolic resistance. And so we need to make sure we're getting adequate doses of protein at each meal, like a good 30-gram dose of animal protein, to get enough of those special aminos that we need to tell our body, hey, it's time to do some repair work. It's like a signal. Like, let's go do some repair work. Let's go shore up this lean mass. Let's go make sure there's enough protein in the bone. And then sleep can't be underestimated. We feel it already as we get older, that a bad night's sleep has much more of an impact on our ability to perform and think straight and just feel good. And so we need to be getting quality sleep, not just hours in bed, but quality sleep for our, again, it impacts our insulin, our hormone profile, especially metabolic hormones, and recovery, growth hormone. It's just, we have to be more deliberate about the basics if we want to continue performing at a high level as we age. We just can't get away with abusing ourselves like we did in our 20s and 30s. Yeah, or absolutely. Neglecting ourselves is maybe a better word.
So how much protein do you recommend for men and then for women typically?
Ideally, so for me, the ideal target, which it sounds like a lot for many people, I would say whatever your ideal body weight is. So if you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to gain weight, whatever it is, pick your ideal body weight you're targeting. 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of that ideal weight is a great target minimum. You can eat more without risk if you want to. I think, and I expect everyone, I say this in the context of, I expect everyone who's aging like that and who's concerned about their health, if you're going to make the effort to eat properly, you should make the effort to exercise as well. So that's going to be beneficial for exercise. You can get away with a little less, probably, some people. I think in the 0.6 grams per pound of ideal body weight, you could probably get away with that. And depending on your exercise routine and what, how light that is, but I don't know that, or like on a random day, if you hit that, that's, don't freak out. But I think the ideal target would be 0.8 to 1 gram across the board for satiety, for recovery, for getting all the nutrients we need from that, not just the protein and the fat, but all the micronutrients I think are beneficial as well. I think that's a great target for an active, healthy person who's trying to optimize their health.
And what about people who say, isn't that much protein too, bad for my kidneys? Because, that's the comment that I get a lot. I'm sure you do too.
Oh yeah. No, if you have kidney disease, then you need to watch if you have active kidney disease, then manage your protein. You need to find whatever your sweet spot is, and then I definitely aim at a high quality. But if you don't have kidney disease, there's no negative impact on the kidneys with protein intake.
People have been told that by somebody, because people ask me all the time, isn't that much protein bad on your kidneys? And people believe that. People in person even say that to me. Like my friends will say, that's a lot of protein. What about your kidneys? I don't know who told them that, but probably for some reason it's supposed to be hard on your kidneys.
Probably a vegetarian.
Yeah.
Probably one of these vegetarian docs out there who's got a pot belly and scrawny arms and legs, who no physical, who doesn't, not that impressive, physical outcome for himself, for his own health, but he's willing to tell people, don't eat the protein because you might have a kidney thing. Meanwhile, my blood work looks pretty good. You know what I mean? And I know a lot of very health conscious, optimally healthy people who target that much protein, and they're thriving.
Right.
So anecdotally, it seems to be working in my experience. And I've seen plenty of, and we included them in the book, there's plenty of studies showing no upper limit for dietary protein. They tested it's up to 300 grams of protein per day per person with no negative side effects. So 300 grams should cover most people's ideal body weight recommendation. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So you mentioned weight training and how important it is. So at my age, I had heard that we shouldn't be doing as much cardio, like running isn't as good as we get older, that I should be doing more weightlifting. What do you think about that? Weightlifting or cardio, or a good mix of both?
well, we could need a good mix of both, but what I understand about what they're saying, strength training should be prioritized because of the risk of sarcopenia and the bone loss, right? Because it stimulates the additional growth of those type 2 muscle fibers, and it puts enough tension on the bones because we get bone growth through the leverage against and the tension from those muscles under high stress on the bone, from the muscles pulling on the bone. That's what stimulates the bone mass. So we need high enough stress, okay, to create the addition of minerals to the bone, as well as the addition of proteins to the muscle. Cardio will not do that. You're hitting more type 1 fibers. It's just not enough of the right kind of mechanical tension that would add that mass. Excessive cardio can, like for instance, someone trying to train for a marathon, half marathon even, or a triathlon. I have clients, extremely healthy clients, gifted college athletes, take incredible care of themselves. After a marathon, I see the testosterone levels and other hormone levels drop for about a month or two. All right. The stress at 40, the stress of that kind of cardiovascular output is something that it requires a lot of recovery. Okay. And if someone's just training, like they're running multiple miles every day, not giving their body enough time to recover, running, especially because of the impact, I think is not great on roads and so forth, but it's that high volume cardiovascular training can add to the sarcopenia, can add to the reduction of muscle mass because it's just not stimulates more of taxing on it. And it can be very it's draining on the hormones, if you're not recovering again. I do think there's a room for a certain amount of it to improve our VO2 max. I think high intensity interval training in shorter amounts rather than long drawn out hour-long, 2-hour-long cardio sessions. 30, 40 minutes of zone 2 here and there is fine. I think that's going to help with building mitochondria peppered in there. But I think the foundation, and I'm long-winded about this, but this is 26 years of fitness training.
Yeah.
I've got a big opinion. It's foundation is strength training, layer in different types of cardio that fit best for you, and then activity. It's just non-exercise activity where it's fun, playing games, riding tennis, or riding your bike, or going for walks. That kind of movement, which you enjoy, but it's not necessarily you're not doing it with the intention of creating enough stress to have a response. You're just doing it at a fun level. That's beneficial too for the just perfusion of blood and oxygen and nutrients throughout the body. So we're meant to move, right? Being sedentary is the worst thing you can do, right?
Yeah.
But that was a bit long-winded, but stress or emphasize the strength training, pepper in the cardio, and then be sure to have some fun.
Yeah, I agree. And I had a couple of years ago read that I shouldn't be doing as much. I was running all the time. Not all the time, but 3 or 4 times a week I was running. So I started lifting weights 5 times a week and quit running. I was doing maybe I've sprinted. I say I do some sprinting, but I bet it's been 15 times in the last year because I hate running. I hate every step I ever took. I ran 2 marathons, 2 half marathons, multiple 5Ks over the years. I hated every step. So I quit running. It was that was my excuse. I was like, okay, I'm not going to run anymore. And the other day I was outside. Our German Shepherd likes to play hide and go seek. So I was outside with my girls playing hide and seek with her. And I was like, I'm having a hard time running around the house. Like, I need to start running again. And so I did. I ran a little bit on Monday and I sprinted a little bit today. And so I don't want to run every day, but do you think that's good enough? Like just a little jog. I did like a mile and a half on Monday. I just want to be able to run if I need to or if I want to, but I don't think I need to be doing 6 miles anymore.
Right. And I alternate some of my cardio because running is hard. I mean, feet, joints, depending on your form, would have to be great. And on the road, really very unforgiving. If you get on dirt or grass for sprints or a track, that's, that would, to me, I would think that'd be ideal for our joints and for
Yeah.
recovering from that. But I have a spin bike and an assault bike in my garage that it's like, I don't want to run every time because of the impact and how hard it is to, and in the winter, like I'm not going to be outside running. So, um, I have that as an alternative where I don't have the impact, but I can get a little bit of cardio in conveniently to build the mitochondria and improve the VO2 max and get the benefits from it with less inflammation and takes less time to recover from.
Yeah.
So find maybe lighter versions of cardio if there's like you hate running, which I understand 100%. But find something that's less taxing and that where you can occupy yourself with like it's easier to occupy yourself with a podcast or something like that or audiobook and just be kind of in the zone, cruising, but safe, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't really thought about the spinning bike for sprinting. I actually have a spinning bike too. So I'll definitely start incorporating that at least like once a week. That's a good idea. Okay. So let's talk about food. What kind of food do you recommend for your clients, for people in general? So not just your clients, but like just the general population who is so sick, so sick. Everybody is so sick. So what kind of foods do you recommend for people? Because I know you're not 100% carnivore. So I want to be upfront about that. You're not 100% carnivore, but you have such a wealth of information. And I don't think everybody needs to be a carnivore. I really don't. I think it's a great place to start, like as an elimination diet. You can add things back in, see how you feel. For me, carnivore works really well because I'm an abstainer. So I can binge on broccoli. I can binge on kale, sauteed kale in olive oil. Oh, I used to love sauteed kale in olive oil. I could binge on all kinds of vegetables. And so for me, it's better if I just don't. But if I was going to eat vegetables, I would eat low oxalate vegetables. If I ever decide I'm going to add things back in, it would be low oxalate because I want to stay as healthy as I can. But just in general, people are lost when it comes to diet. And I really think in a lot of cases, people just, I mean, I have to give a lot of people the benefit of the doubt. They must just really not know how horrible some of those foods are for us. And so we'll talk about that later. But so what kind of foods do you recommend?
Yeah, well, let's piggyback on what you just said.
Okay.
They don't realize it because so much has been emphasized around calories and around the amount of food and not on food quality.
Yes.
And I think what we can look back to, well, so we have a huge epidemic of metabolic disease right now. Heart disease, let's name a few, the top ones: heart disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes,
cancer,
right? Those did not really exist in the 1800s. Okay, so we have created this epidemic of these metabolic diseases since the 20th century. 1901, obesity rate was 1%. Okay, heart disease was nearly unheard of. The first study was 1912. It was like a very small. Most doctors never saw someone with heart disease. Very small percentage of people had heart disease. Type 2 diabetes, we didn't start charting it until the 50s because we didn't identify it officially until the 1930s. We had type 1 diabetes. There wasn't enough, if there were any examples of type 2 diabetes, there weren't enough to be recognized.
Right.
Okay. So what changed in our diet during the 20th century? Well, we had the addition, for one thing, of processed food. And the ingredients and the new ingredient processed food which did not exist prior to the 1900s is processed oils, or these seed oils, right? Like canola, soybean oil, rice bran oil, safflower, sunflower. The hateful eight, as Dr. Kate Shanahan calls them, and these are known as seed oils. And so these came in as basic first. Before that, all of our added fats came from animal fats, right? And then in the 1900s, we developed these oils and were able to taste. They eliminated the bad taste. They were putting them in foods where they didn't have the weird smell and the colors. And so they started off as cooking replacements for like replacing margarine or lard or tallow, or excuse me, using margarine to replace butter and then replacing lard and tallow with these cooking fats like Crisco.
Yes. Then
they start putting them in foods as a preservative and a replacement for fats in these processed food they were making. And that I have in the book, I demonstrated I have charts from Dr. Chris Kenobi, as well as a couple from Dr. Kate Shanahan. I want to give them credit. She's been calling this out for 15 years. Correlation, but we put them on a timeline. We can see the increase in diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and heart disease, right along with the increase of vegetable oils in our food system, because they've risen to a point in the 2000s where these oils make up about 30% of the caloric intake of your average American.
Crazy.
And we know about 65% of the average American's diet is made up of these highly processed foods. It's really not a mystery why we have all this metabolic disease all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. This stuff did, again, it didn't exist in the 19th century. We've created it in the 20th century right along with these new foods we've created. So my first is get rid of as much processed, back to my advice, get rid of as much processed food as possible. If you're going to eat food, make sure it's a whole food. Get animal protein, just make that the center of your diet, animal protein, which along with the fats that come with that, right? And then if you're adding food in addition to that animal protein, whole food, single ingredient food. You take it home and mix it up and cook it and do whatever you're going to do with it, fine. But when you bring it into your house, it needs to be a single ingredient food 90% of the time or more or better, right? Yeah. I understand some things we're not perfect, but you should be eating whole, like something that your great grandparents would have eaten or made on their farm. And that's, if you can stick to that, you will by and large avoid metabolic disease, in my opinion, because we didn't have it 130 years ago. It just didn't exist. And so to me, by process of elimination, that is the first thing people should do is eliminate and avoid these oils as you go out to eat, right? Understand that anything cooked in a restaurant that's fried, sauteed, is going to be cooked in these oils unless you ask them to do it differently, and some of them may not do it even then. There's a few where we're getting lucky with a few restaurants popping up now who are starting to use olive oil or to cook things. And some of them might do butter for you, but it's still pretty rare. And when you go out to eat, if you have even your meat could be cooked in these oils. And so asking them to cook it in something else would be a great habit. But I mean, just start by, don't bring this stuff in your home.
Right.
And don't order super fried foods in restaurants because they're saturated with it.
Right.
To me, that's probably the biggest move you can make to improving your diet is just stick to whole food 90% of the time.
And I think that for people who are thinking, does that mean I never get to have chocolate chip cookies again, or I never get to have, a cake again? And that's not the case, because there is a huge difference. If you're going to make chocolate chip cookies or you crave a chocolate chip cookie, there's a huge difference between buying Pillsbury cookie dough or coming home to your house and making it with the whole ingredients that you have at your house. I mean, obviously you want to have a good flour if you can, you want to have those better ingredients, but even just using the regular flour and sugar and vanilla extract and all of that you already have at your house, it's going to be
butter.
So much better than Pillsbury.
Real butter. Don't put the teaspoon of vegetable oil in there if it calls for a tablespoon of vegetable oil of anything, and even a cake. Use butter. Butter's better for sure. I mean,
absolutely.
You just can't. Our house, there is coconut oil, but because that's low linoleic acid, that's low. It doesn't have those high omega-6 oil, fatty acids that are in the vegetable oils, but as well as bacon fat, and we have tallow, and we have a lot of butter. Yeah. And that's what we use to cook foods in that get sauteed, like cooking eggs or something like that. So it's really in your home, you can make those changes pretty easily. What's difficult is when you bring something home in a box, a bag, or a bottle that says one thing on the front and has a list of other things on the back that, your olive oil based salad dressing is probably full of soybean or canola oil.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And so you need to find a good olive oil if you're gonna do that. If you're making salads and you're putting olive oil, find a really good olive oil to make sure it's virgin, it's not extra virgin, and it's not been diluted with these other oils, and make your own. If you're going to do that. But I would stick to animal as much as possible. Stick to animal fats, or as an alternative, extra virgin coconut oil, because it has as little of those polyunsaturated fats as butter does. It's very similar. So
salad dressing was one of the hardest things for me to find when I was still eating vegetables, but cutting out vegetable oils. It was literally one of the hardest things. I looked for months, and the only one that I could really find was Bragg's. Had a good olive oil vinaigrette or something, but now I've heard Bill Gates owns Bragg's, and so
really,
so that's what somebody said. So I'm a little bit worried now. I need to do some research on that and find out if that's true or not, because if it is, I don't know if they're going to change the recipe. I don't know what they're going to do with that, but I just want to be careful of that. But just in general, salad dressing is the hardest. Get some really good balsamic vinegar. There are olive oil stores all over the country, and you can probably find them online too, that will sell you any flavor balsamic vinegar and olive oil pair to go together.
Yeah.
And you can make the best salad dressing you've ever had by just using those two things. So
Yeah.
I don't need salad anymore, but if I did, that's what I would do.
Sometimes, and I don't either, unless like I have a client with a garden, and
Yeah.
every summer she comes up with this. She says, "Hey, do you want to take?" And
Yes.
I'm taking this stuff home. It's from her garden. She grew it. I know how she takes care of it.
Right.
That's nutritious food. And so I'll make an exception. Summer is just a kind of a feel for more of those kind of plant foods for me.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll just let the vinegar sit on it to kind of like soften up the leaves sort of. And then I just sprinkle some like Parmesan cheese on it. I don't even do oil sometimes. And it's just Parmesan cheese and vinegar and these that have been saturated into the greens.
Yeah.
And that's pretty yummy to me. I'm not worried about the oil, but it's you know, again, if you enjoy that, like you said, there's ways to find something that's quality, that's going to benefit you. And you're not really doing without at all. You're actually making it better by putting forth that extra effort.
Yeah, my mouth is actually watering thinking about
me too.
A crispy salad with some balsamic vinegar and some blue cheese or some feta.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. If I was ever going to like cheat on carnivore, if I was ever going to do that, it probably would honestly be with a salad. Like, well, or cake, but salad would be the better choice.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, it's or cake, but I get it because there's no guilt associated with having a good salad like that, especially something that comes out of where it's sourced.
Yeah, absolutely, that's huge. Yeah, because then you're not getting the glyphosate, you're not getting all those other things that are making us sick. I mean, that's a whole nother topic, but all of those things are making us sick too. And I think that's important. Also, is like the products in your house too. The fresh laundry scent that everybody loves so much is the number one cause of indoor air pollution. I mean, it just is. And all of those things, I describe it as like your bucket gets full. Like you eat the processed foods, you eat the vegetable oils, you eat, more processed foods, you eat lots of bread, and your bucket gets fuller and fuller. And then there's, the outside things like outside allergens and stuff. And then you add in all the toxins in your home. I read the other day, I think it's like every human is exposed to something like 70,000 toxins every day. So if you can reduce some of those, whether it's in your food or your products or your makeup, I started buying natural makeup and I use vinegar to clean the house, and you start eliminating some of those toxins, and your bucket doesn't overflow anymore. And when your bucket overflows is when you get all of the autoimmune diseases, all the sicknesses, low immune system, like all of those things happen because your bucket is overflowing. So everywhere we can eliminate some toxins, and I think food is probably the most important, but anywhere we can eliminate some of those toxins, you lower the amount in your bucket, I think. And I think people just don't realize that. They already don't realize the food is so bad, and they certainly don't think about the products in their home.
No. Right. Yeah. And like you said, the cosmetics, the personal products, the deodorants with aluminum, I mean, mouthwash, we've just seen, it really eliminates the bacteria in your mouth that can actually help convert nitrates to nitrites, which is a nitric oxide. So it basically negatively impacts our body's ability to create nitric oxide, which is so vital for healthy blood pressure and all sorts of just, function of bringing oxygen to your cells. And so it's amazing that, we've gone this long with things we've normalized so many things that are really harming us. Mm-hmm. And we're almost weird for abstaining from these very accepted products when the evidence is there. It's clearly not something we had an issue with or had available to us even 130 years ago, 150 years ago. Right. And we've got all these diseases. We should be looking for what's new in our system, not just food, but plastics, these aluminum and all of these. We have toxified our environment. We've made things easier, but we've toxified it in the process. And then we have all this disease and we're wondering how this happened. Right. It's just, it takes some effort. People might think you're a little weird, but I'm a healthy weirdo.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's the difference. Like people will say, don't you want to just be normal? No. Have you seen normal lately?
Have you seen normal is sick? Normal is a new sick.
That's right. If you're not on any medications at our age, you're the odd man out, which is just so disheartening. And the same people that will ask us for studies for a low carb or ketogenic or carnivore diet are the same people that have the plugins, in every plug in every room in their house. They have the little things on the air vents in their car, so you can be sure to get those toxins blown right into your face. And
Right.
they're eating all the processed foods. They're eating, stopping at Dunkin' Donuts and getting one of those fake coffee drinks and getting a donut for breakfast. The same people that will ask us for studies on what we're doing are doing all of those things. Like they
Right.
don't even think about it because those things are so readily available and on every street corner. And I mean, I had to go in and buy toothpaste for my family recently, and it's like a nightmare. Like
Yeah.
the toothpaste aisle is so out of hand. Like every aisle at the grocery store is like that. Like, do we need 50 different kinds of toothpaste in every Walmart in America? It just seems so extreme to me, but people buy into the hype and everybody else is doing it. So they do it too. And I would like to think that at some point, everybody's going to be doing what we're doing and more people will join us.
I think there is a move. I think there's a way of moving. I think we're obviously early adopters for a lot of things like that. You know, when you start eliminating those household products and those cosmetic products, as well as your diet, as well as, you know, taking the effort and time to continue exercising as you get older and expecting more of your health as you get older. We're definitely early adopters. If you check your blood work on a regular basis, and you know what it means when you look at it, you're unusual. You're an early adopter. But I do think there's a huge health, depending on where you live, but there's a huge movement in this taking place right now of creating a sense of sovereignty with our health, where we understand and we know what we need better than what the then that has more of a preventative perspective on it than what we're getting from mainstream health and what we're getting from the medical industry and even from our doctors, because they're not caught up on prevention. They're caught up on how do I handle this illness or this problem that's right in front of me. What's the most expedient way to take care of this symptom or to make sure, you know, heal up this wound? Fine, that's their job. But when it comes to preventative medicine, which I think, especially after what we've come through in the last few years, there's much more emphasis on preventative health and longevity. Longevity is like a trending buzzword. I mean, it's the hashtag of the year. It is where young people are starting to pay attention to. People in their 20s and 30s are paying attention to longevity and how they can prevent disease as they get older, like we haven't seen before. While there's an obvious contrast in their side of people who seem to be absolutely oblivious to preventative health and are celebrating what I would call disease, right? There. And so I think there's a greater divide, but I think the preventative health move is growing and gaining some steam and getting some attention from podcasters like what you're doing. And even large podcasts like Joe Rogan, right? We're very, very much front and center on preventative health.
Mm-hmm.
It's a movement that's growing, and it needs more attention, but I think it's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to take a really long time. That's the hard part, is we can't save everybody, but even the
No,
people we can, I feel like it's going to be a long time.
people have to be looking for it. And sometimes you can show it to them. And if they're not looking for it, they won't see it.
Right.
And so when people hit that wall where they're like, I'm tired of this. I don't want to be this way anymore. They start looking, and then they're receptive to the information when they're hungry for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to convince someone who doesn't see the problem or hasn't hit that limit in their illness, where they're tired. They're tired of being sick. They're tired of not feeling good, and they see there's a better way. It's unfortunate we can't do that for them. They have to hit that wall. They have to have that realization themselves. And then when they start looking, they're receptive to it. And that's really all we can do, is help those who are asking the questions and who are truly receptive and truly looking for it. Beyond that, there's always going to be an element of population that just will just go along with whatever they're told to do. Mm-hmm. And they're okay with being sick, mm-hmm. right? And it's the normalized level of sickness.
Yeah, it's really sad. So how did you handle when your kids were younger? How did you handle nutrition? Because these days, it's not just the adults that are so sick, it's the kids too. So how did you handle that with your kids, the way you guys eat?
Right.
How did you handle keeping them from the junk, basically, and birthday parties and things like that? How did you keep them healthy?
Well, there's always an element of that, and so it was pretty balanced. But I had like we were home, we had healthy meals. We cooked the majority of our meals. I would get up early and make them all breakfast before they go to school with a bunch of eggs and you know good fruit, sometimes fruit or some good food with them, and pack their lunches. So they had good food going to school. What they did when they got to school, I couldn't control. They want to trade that out for something, then I, I couldn't control that. But for what we had at home, we always cooked from home. We always had a variety of whole food. When we understood seed oils, we started eliminating seed oils. I remember showing them a documentary when they were younger. I can't remember which. It may have been Food Inc., one of those old documentaries from way back. And I remember going through the pantry. One of them going through the pantry and like, does this have diabetes in it? Does this have diabetes in it? And so just exposing them to it so they were having awareness, but it wasn't perfect. It wasn't perfect there. And so when they'd go to a friend's house, we knew there's only so much we could control.
Right.
But if we had most of the food in our home being healthy food that we were happy for them to eat, and we created an example like through our choices, of the choices we made of how we wanted to eat, what we wanted to eat, how we wanted to live, we knew that would hope to carry forward into their adulthood. And so we've got 3 in their 20s now, one young guy and who's 12, just turned 12. And the older ones, they know, I mean, they have habits where they're starting to ask me more questions about their health and working out. And one of them, our third, has always been very conscientious about what she ate, working out, even through school. She was very busy, but she made her food. She worked out all the time. And so it was really setting the example, more so than trying to kind of force it. So there were things that were mandatory. There was wiggle room. And then I think the long term was setting the example. And we're still doing it because we don't look like their friends' parents. And we don't have the same issues that their friends' parents do. And we're not on the medications that their friends' parents are. And so there's a distinct difference in our health outcome as we age, because the proof's in the pudding. Once you get past 45 or 50, it's like if you're healthy, you're in rare air. You know what I mean? If you're visibly and medically healthy, you're not struggling with some sort of obvious metabolic disease, you stand out a bit. And I think that says a lot more for what we were doing or what we were practicing than just the rules we were trying to tell them, or the things that we were trying to like convey to them when they were too young to really understand the importance of it. They're seeing it now. So when they hit 40, my hope is as they hit their late 30s and 40s and they start having those hurdles where they are, it takes a little more work, right? They're starting to feel age. Well, I've set an example, created a consistent path where I had a result that was beneficial, and it would mean even more to them at that point. But it's nice to get those questions and to see them making changes now, even in their 20s. That's encouraging because a lot of us didn't.
Absolutely. You're in your prime in your 20s and you don't take care of yourself. I told my husband recently, one of the worst things we ever do for ourselves is to quit exercising. Like, you just get busy, or it's not already worked into your calendar, or we just get complacent. Sometimes we get lazy and, we take a day off because it's raining. And then the next day, now we've slept in one day and we're like, oh, well, let's sleep in again today too. Like, but every time we quit for whatever, it always seems like a good reason. But anytime we ever quit, I'm always sorry. Every single time. You never regret a workout, but you regret missing it for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So what about biohacking? Do you recommend any biohacking? Do you do any yourself?
Some. Yeah. I think I'm layering more of that in now. I'm big on, I think peptides and bioregulators, which are kind of a division of peptides that are just now starting to come to the forefront over the last couple of years, or can be very beneficial for stimulating stem cells that kind of have an impact on our, they have an epigenetic impact. So the bioregulators are especially on our DNA, and just improving how our certain organs are working, how we could get a little extra benefit from those. And despite the fact that, they're being kind of attacked right now, the FDA is kind of coming after them. But there's a lot of there's decades of research in from Russia that they've been using them since the 70s and 80s on military, they're cosmonauts, they're Olympic athletes. They have decades of research that we just aren't going to recognize, right, in the US because that would threaten powers that be. But they have decades of this research. And from all the Eastern Bloc countries, they've been using these for several decades. Tens of thousands of people, millions of people have used these studies with tens of thousands of people in them, human studies. And so peptides are a great addition as far as biohacking. I think things, if you can afford it, hyperbaric chamber, fantastic for stimulating our stem cell production. I mean, there's really, I think where to begin. Supplementation for sleep, like magnesium and things like this, magnesium and glycine, those can really help someone get into a deeper sleep if they're struggling with that. Because as we get older, we're losing, melatonin production. It gets harder to stay asleep. GABA isn't quite as available. We're not producing as much, and magnesium can help with that. If you get a magnesium that crosses the blood-brain barrier, it can help with that GABA production. So it's hard for me to narrow down the direction to go with biohacking because there's just so much you can do to improve the function of kind of these cells that just need a little help as we get older. They need a little boost. Is there any particular you like to try yourself?
Like, what do you think? Let's say, so what do you think about cold plunging?
Cold plunging has its benefits. I think it can be overdone. It's a stressor. It's a hormetic stressor, right? And so not that hormetic stressors are bad, but we got to make sure we manage them. And so if you're really pushing hard in your exercise and maybe your diet, then I wouldn't think cold plunging 4 or 5 days a week would be ideal. You need to manage that stress depending on your age and how that impacts you. I think you could filter it in there, put it in there once or twice a week if you want. I mean, these are broad strokes, right? I'm not being prescriptive, and it really depends on the person. But we need to account for anything that's a hormetic stressor adds up, right? You're talking about that bucket. We have a bucket of stress we can handle. It could be our job, could be our family, could be metabolic stress from our diet, metabolic stress from working out, things we have to recover from. And so all of these things add up. They can elevate cortisol and epinephrine, which are stress hormones. And so we need to make sure as we add these stressors, we have room to recover and that we aren't trying to over leverage all of this stress. Like a little is good, more is better, not always. Right. And so I think there's a place for it. I think sauna is fantastic, probably a little safer than as far as being able to push the envelope with than cold. But I'm not saying cold bed. I have a cold plunge in my backyard. Believe me, I use it. I have, especially in the summer, because I want to, bring all the inflammation down. It just feels great. But again, there's a place for it. And I think we need to manage these. Anything that counts as a hormetic stressor, they need to be managed, especially as we get older.
Okay. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So what does a typical day of eating look like for you?
Okay. I warned you, it's not carnivore.
That's fine. So, I know. That's okay.
Yeah. No, I start off with in the morning with sometimes a couple pork chops and maybe like a sweet potato or a small potato or like a little bit of fruit. And then with the goal of hitting about 200 grams of protein in the day. But I like to hit it in 3 or 4 meals so that each time I have a meal of that much protein, I'm getting that little boost of the muscle protein synthesis to recover and so forth. And I don't like eating a giant meal at one time. I just don't. It just doesn't feel good to me. Usually squeeze a workout in there. And so I'm having 4 meals very similar to that, where I'm getting about usually anywhere from 35 to maybe 60 grams of protein in a meal. And then some form of whole food carb, which may come from fruit or usually some type of potato with that. And in depending on if it's around my workout, I'm gonna have a little more of the carb, like before and after, just to fuel it and to recover from, and try to taper down on that as I get into so my last meal of the day isn't giant because of the impact it can have on sleep, trying to digest that heavy meal within 2 or 3 hours of sleep. So I try to finish that last meal give myself a good 3 hours before going to bed. And so I intermittent fasted for many years, like 10-ish years, right? And I found for me over time, as I got older, I started noticing my blood work. I had a couple of markers that told me my cortisol levels were getting too high. So they fluctuate, wake up in the morning and my sleep was getting disturbed. but mine seemed to be staying chronically high. So adding that breakfast in within a couple of months helped improve my sleep. So probably bring that cortisol level back down. Because again, I was pulling too many hormetic stressors, just doing too much of the stress response. And so it took a little bit of correction to get that to come back in normal ranges, where now if I want to push it a little bit on a certain morning, I can. But for the most part, I eat breakfast because I'm creating a lot of stress with my workouts and with with other, hormetic stressors I might be doing, whether it's a sauna blanket or if it's a cold plunge or something like that. I just don't. I kind of found that as I kept my meals early, started my meals early, just like getting early sunlight, it really set my circadian rhythm properly. That allowed my sleep to improve, because that seemed to be where it was coming back to bite me more than anywhere else. And so, but that's essentially usually 4 meals with 35 to 60 grams of animal protein and some form of whole food carbohydrate along with that. And so that's that, like I said, from fruit or some sort of potato. I don't eat oatmeal. I don't, it's just something that doesn't, and I make that choice because it's just something, one, avoiding glyphosate, two, it just doesn't super agree with me. So if there's foods that whole food carbs that don't agree with you, your body says, no, that doesn't feel right. Listen to that.
Right.
So for what might be good for one person may not be good for me,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think if most people ate like that, you'd be healthier than 95% of Americans if people ate like that.
Yeah.
I mean, whole foods, whether you eat fruits and vegetables or just meat, whole foods is definitely the way to go.
Right. For sure.
So if you had one
avoiding
piece
those toxins. I mean, so if we just avoid, you're just avoiding toxin, basically.
Yeah.
By doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's okay. I was just going to say, so if you had one piece of advice for people that are watching this that feel like they have tried everything, they've tried everything, they've tried every diet in the book, they've tried every exercise program, and they feel like they can't get ahead, what would you tell them?
I'm going to push back on them a bit, because why would you stop trying? Your biggest leverage in any of this, even if your diet isn't perfect, if your routine isn't perfect, your biggest leverage is consistency. I didn't do everything right over the last 35 plus years of me pursuing health, or even 26 years as a professional health coach and personal trainer. I didn't do everything right. I made a lot of mistakes. I had a lot of trial and error. But I kept moving forward, and I kept learning from those mistakes, consistently showing up, working out, eating as well as I knew to work out, or eating as well as I knew to eat at the time. And then once I understood the importance of it and started tracking it, prioritizing my sleep as a sleep quality and doing what I could. Consistency is something we can all do, right? We know what consistency looks like. That's showing up every week. And so consistency, even if you're only 70% or 80% right in what you're doing, that will pay off exponentially. So it's not the vacation you took where you went off your diet and you just laid around at the beach, that week-long vacation or the 2-week vacation, whatever it is. That doesn't cause disease. That doesn't cause excess weight gain, right? It's what we do the majority of the year that really sets our health for what it is, right? That really puts it where your outcomes, that determine your outcomes. And so what we do consistently throughout the year, even if it's not perfect, it's not the perfect workout, it's not the perfect diet, but you're primarily moving in the right direction. You know what's right, and you're doing those things consistently. You will have positive results. But if you think, perfect is the enemy of good. And so if you're waiting for things to be perfect or to understand them perfectly in order to take consistent action, you may never find that.
Right.
It's, you know what I mean? Do it as well as you can do it right now, or that week, or that day, but show up and do it.
Yeah, that's great advice. So Zane, you want to tell people where they can find you?
Sure. I'm most active on Instagram as Zane Griggs Fitness, but if you want to find my other socials, zanegriggs.com is the best place to find it. The other socials and any kind of like free downloads I have, like free 40plan.com, which talks a little bit about my approach to building muscle after 40. Link to the book is on there, The Kicking Ass After 50, which is on Amazon, but there's a link in there. You can go right to it. So zanegriggs.com is the best place to find those links.
Great. Thank you so much. This was very insightful, and I hope we could help some people today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Serena. I appreciate the time.
And thank you for joining us. I'll see you next time. Be safe, be well.